Good job.
Okay. Because I usually remember about halfway through the meeting to record it. So I'm actually going to start at the beginning. So.
I do that too. Don't feel bad. I think I didn't start recording the office meeting last month until like 5 or 10 minutes in. Whoops.
Yeah. So, and Lisa, I don't know if you know Eric, but Eric Wolfe is with Chicago Title.
Hi, Eric.
Hi.
He's going to be doing, I'm going to turn it over to him in a minute, but he's going to be doing the presentation today. So this is the second in our 3-part first quarter training here on due diligence. Our first meeting was on property inspections, and we're going to go over title reports a little bit today. Eric's going to tell us a little bit about the services that Chicago Title can provide for us both before and during the transaction, and then we're going to talk a little bit about a commercial title report. And then next month we're going to probably go over the due diligence process in general at our commercial training meeting. So, all right, so we're at 12:03. We'll go ahead and get started. We may have a few more people. I know Mara's coming on later, join us, but we'll go ahead and I'm going to turn it over to Eric now.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Sean, and thank you for everybody who's participating today. Like Sean mentioned, my name is Eric Wolfe. I'm the commercial sales manager for Chicago Title here in Arizona. I've got 3 different commercial offices that we support. One in the Biltmore area, one up in North Scottsdale, Rangetree on the 101, and one down at 60 in Val Vista. So 3 different commercial specific teams, and then I've got one other sales rep that works on my team. A little bit about me. I've been in the commercial real estate market here in Phoenix for about 20 years now. I started as a broker at Marcus & Millichap for the first 6 years of my career. And then I worked at CoStar for 6 years. And now I've been at Chicago for a little over 8 years. I became the sales manager back in May. And it's kind of an exciting time, although obviously the market isn't really agreeing with us and you know everything that we're trying to accomplish. But we've had a lot of changes over here, and it's kind of a new era of Chicago Title. So it's really exciting to be in front of you today and talking to you about some of the tools and resources that we have available to agents like yourself. And then we're going to talk a little bit about, like Sean said, that title commitment, and pointing out some best practices, some things to look out for, and then also just some slight differences between residential and commercial. So I wanted to start out by just showing you this reference page of real estate laws and customs by state. You know, one of the things that we talk about sometimes with clients, especially with out-of-state buyers and sellers, is understanding what's normal and customary in our state, and also what's normal and customary in other people's states. I had one situation where the buyer and seller were digging their heels in on a, I think it was the owner's policy, and the buyer was coming from Florida. In Florida, the seller pays for the entire thing. And here it's split. I'm sorry, it was the escrow fees. So just I have this, and I can provide all of this to Sean to share with everyone. I also have a full reference guide for a state-by-state laws and customs if you're interested in learning more about that as well. The first thing I wanted to actually, I'll hold off on that one for now. One of the services that Chicago Title offers to its clients is an online searchable database that we call Premier Services. Again, I'll provide the link to register for this if anybody's interested, but this is a great supplement to your other information services like the assessor's office, recorder's office, you know, the treasurer's office, Arizona Corporation Commission. This is going to be a searchable website where you can put together property profile reports of public data. And it looks a little something like this, if I can log back into it. This is a national searchable tool. And so we can just come in and put an address in here. I'm going to say my office building here, 6710 North Scottsdale Road. I click on that, it finds me on the map. Just kidding, it finds the office complex on the map. And then what we can do is we can just hit get property profile within this. It works for commercial and for residential. And then what it's going to do is going to put together, can everybody see this report that just originated? Perfect. So this is going to have your information in it, not mine, as far as provided by, but it's going to give you an overview of that ownership information, obviously site address, mailing address for the owner, short legal description, any sort of map references, year of construction, square feet, lot size. And then what's really interesting, although this hasn't sold very often, just once, it is going to show a sales and loan history on the property with hyperlinks into those recorded documents. Now, we in Maricopa County are spoiled in the sense that Maricopa County is the most data-rich county in the United States for availability of public information. You know, the assessor site, the recorder site, they're amazing resources. What's nice about this as a supplement to that is that this is going to be property specific, and it's going to have a nice printable report with some demographics, with maps. If you use it for the residential side, it has options to include school information, sales comps, although I don't really recommend that. As agents, we want to control that information and what's being delivered instead of what's generated automatically out of a system like this. But a great resource, and also a phone app. So for those of you who are using CoStar, it's a good supplement. For those of you who are using more on the just public government websites, this might actually be a go-to, especially if you're trying to put together a report for a client that looks a little bit cleaner and has your information on it instead of trying to screenshot out of the Maricopa County site. So that's one of our most used outside of escrow services from a searchable standpoint. Everything that I'm showing you today is free, free to our clients. My predecessor would joke that we are a for-profit operation. So, all of this is in an effort to work with you eventually. But, part of my job on the sales side of things is to help us all do more deals. We all get paid on the same day, when the deals close. And if I can help you speed up decision-making processes, help problem solve through issues with whether it's title specific or, leveraging my circle of influence and my referral network, anything that I can do to help you do more deals benefits all of us. So, so that's Premier Services. I'm going to move on and show you a report that we put out every Friday that is becoming much more valuable given the market condition that we're in. This is what we call our commercial activity report. There was a time in the past when this was called the foreclosure report. Then we didn't have any more foreclosures. And so we rebranded it to the commercial activity report. Now that we're starting to see some of those foreclosure, this foreclosure activity pick up, this information can be really valuable to try and find diamonds in the rough and potentially help some owners out of difficult situations. So if you're interested in this, like I said, I'm going to send all of this stuff to Sean. And then if you want to be added to our distribution list for this kind of information, please just send me your signature block and we'll add you to our list. What I'll point out here really quick, and I'm just going to kind of fly through this on a really high level view. You see, we put out issue 649. We have been doing this for almost 650 weeks. So we keep a long tally of historical data for you to reference. And that's, I think, one of the things that I want to impress upon everybody is just, if you're looking for public information, please think of us. your time is valuable. And, we can usually get to information, whether it's on a individual property level or, macro spreadsheet of every kind of property, in a certain area. I want to take that time off your plate so that you can do money-making activities, right? Calls, meetings, proposals, listings. Nobody makes money looking up phone numbers and trying to find a CC&R on, the recorder's website. It's all available there, but what's nice about what we have available, and I'll go into this in a little bit more detail, is we can pull everything up on a property level and look at the entire chain of title, select which documents we want, and then provide that to you in a due diligence package. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. So if you're interested, you'll get this every Friday. And what we're tracking is notice of trustee sale information. You're going to see property types. We hyperlink all of the parcel numbers into the Maricopa County Assessor's website. So this becomes a little bit of a working, living spreadsheet. We've got lender name, loan amount, property address. One thing that's very interesting about this is everywhere where you see this little red tab is a comment, and we're actually providing phone numbers for owners. So every one of these little red tabs has a phone number. I can't guarantee it's the phone number, but it's a better starting point than having to go and find these all on your own. We use a couple of different services. All of this information comes out of a service called Black Knight, which is the largest aggregator of public record information, public real estate information in the United States. It's also the information source that's feeding that Premier Services online resource that we just went over. So you're going to see lender name, you're going to see owner name, you're going to have trustee information, when that trustee sale is coming up, and any sort of secondary financing if there is any. You'll notice that there's a section of properties that are not highlighted in this black and orange. Everything that's up top in white is a new property for this last week. So a newly noticed trustee sale. And if you're not familiar with the trustee sale process, as soon as this notice of trustee sale is recorded, the owner has 90 days to cure that foreclosure process. Sometimes the trustee sale gets postponed because the owner is trying to work with the lender to either bring their loan current, refinance, sell the property. But there is going to be opportunity in here. And if you look at this column B of issue number, we have issues, as recently as a handful of weeks ago, where there were no new notices. Having these 6 new notices of trustee sale, 1 last week, 2 the week before. This was a bigger week, 6 the week before that. So I anticipate that this is going to increase with the number of properties that receive this new notice of trustee sale. So segueing back to this due diligence package, what I would recommend is every Friday when this comes out, take a look for a couple minutes, see if there's any of these properties that fit within the property type that you're specializing in, the location that you're specializing in, or just anything that's of interest. And what you can do is you can reach out to us and we will put together a free preliminary due diligence package of title documents. This is where that recorder's office and all of those public websites are really nice, but they're going to take you time, and I want to take that time off of your plate. So what we did a while ago, and that's not the one I want, I'm looking for this. So we call this a property information checklist. And what it is just a preliminary due diligence package of title docs. We can search into what we call a chain of title in a software system. We can select all of these documents that we want. I have an in-house researcher named Stephanie Maselko, and Stephanie will label each one of those PDFs individually with what they are. Then she puts them into a zip file, and we email it over with any maps and any assessor information that we can find. So it's going to take a lot of time off of your plate to compile this information, and then you can use me and my team as a resource to ask any questions that you have about the information, look for any red flags that might be on title, whether it's a, lis pendens, violations, bankruptcy, obviously these notice of trustee sale, any of that kind of Q&A and problem solving that we can help you do on the front end to avoid the cliches like surprises kill deals and time kills deals, right? We want to get out ahead of all of these issues to try and solve as much as we can to get to what we call free and clear title, right? Because that's what we need to have to transfer it to the next owner. One of the things that we created this for is that, especially when we got really busy the last few years, it's going to take a couple of weeks to put together a title commitment for a commercial property. On residential, it's usually 2 to 3 days, but on a commercial property, they're more detailed and they take longer. I can turn this information around in 24 to 48 hours, again, and it's free. So it's a great due diligence package to put together, especially if you're about to go in and meet with an owner. You are going in as an expert in the market. And wouldn't it be nice to know that the owner hasn't paid their property taxes in a few years, or if they have a violation from the city or the county for not cleaning up their property, or I've seen swimming pool violations. For those of you who are in the multifamily space, it would probably be good to know that there is a land use restriction agreement, which has to do with subsidized housing and the rules around what you can and can't charge for rent. So all of those kind of questions and answers and information can come from this preliminary due diligence package, and our interaction to try and help you go into those meetings very well prepared. So I'm going to come back to our commercial activity report, because again, from a workflow standpoint, take a look at this. If it's of interest, come get that due diligence package. We start understanding more about the property. Here's a phone number for the owner. Give them a call. Present yourself, as a professional with solutions. Or if you've got clients that are looking for these kinds of properties to acquire, you can also reach out to the lenders to see what that process looks like and if they're interested in selling the loan. I haven't seen as much success on that path from a brokerage standpoint, because ultimately, if they sell the loan to the buyer, there's no real estate transaction and therefore no commission. But I am working with a number of investors who are trying to establish relationships with these lenders to get out in front of these deals. As I move across the bottom here, you'll see we've got a number of tabs, and these new notice of trustee sale. So somebody's got 90 days to cure. We move over to the upcoming trustee sales. These are all the properties that are still in the process of that foreclosure. You can see over here on the left-hand side, the upcoming sale dates. We report this information for every property that is going to auction in the next 90 days. So you, again, have kind of this living, working spreadsheet that you can reference back and forth, and really trying to track these properties and finding something that's of interest to you and your clients. When we get down to this trustee sales results, looks like there weren't any from last week, but you can see different categories of these foreclosure stages in column C. So I just want to go over these really quickly, but we do include them as the cover page of this email that you're going to receive. So we've got the different tabs that we went over: new notice of trustee sale, upcoming trustee sales, and then these trustee sales results. The foreclosure stages of sold means that the loan was paid off and that there's a new owner of the property. So, somebody bought it already before it actually went to foreclosure. Released would be that the loan was paid off, but the ownership didn't change. So in that case, we're going to assume that they refinanced, the property. Canceled means that they brought the loan current, but they didn't pay it off. So these ones are very interesting to me in tracking those moving forward, because if somebody got themselves in trouble once, didn't refi and didn't sell the property, they just made some loan payments to come current. Well, it's possible that they're going to be back in that situation again, whether that's because they lost a tenant or, again, the financials, the loan reset on a higher interest rate, that they had an adjustable rate mortgage. Lots of possibilities in that canceled category. Bank owned would be if the bank took the property back, and then third owned would be if an investor purchased that property. So coming back to our spreadsheet, you're going to see everywhere that shows bank owned, we show what the bank took the property back for. Typically, that's going to be that original loan amount is what's going to be reported. You're also going to see these third owned, and we're going to go back. Sometimes these third owned, the prices don't show up right away, so we go back and fill them in. But a lot of these third owned and investor purchase deals, a lot of them aren't in the business of owning real estate. A lot of those contracts are going to try and get assigned. They're going to try and flip them really quick for a profit. So still a lot of opportunity and a lot of interesting ways to use this information to find opportunity. I got a text from Stella. It says, do we get the information about bankruptcy filings on those properties? We do. We do when we put together that preliminary due diligence package. Oops, I keep going back to the wrong one. This preliminary due diligence package, we will include any bankruptcy information if it's there. All right. Okay, so I'm going through this a little quicker than I expected. I'll get you guys out of here soon. So we've gone over the Premier Services, that online searchable resource. We've talked about the foreclosure information. Oh, I'll continue on the foreclosure information. I've got a few more tabs. You'll see commercial sales, commercial loans, and commercial refis down here. This is especially good information for anybody who doesn't have a service like CoStar or Vista or something else that's tracking sales comps, because it's going to literally just show every single sale that happens over $50,000. Now, some of these, like you see these Land Sea Homes of Arizona, that's going to be a portfolio of finished lots, right? And we can see that from the lot square footage, but that total is 2,957,500. It's not multiple 2,957,500 sales. It's just one that includes the whole thing. But we can start seeing active buyers in the market to potentially prospect to show them additional properties if they're looking for additional acquisitions. We can also go to this next tab and we can see these are all the commercial loans that are being originated. We can use this to see who the active lenders are in our market. So right now, with financing being more difficult and changing, we'll put it easy and say that it's just a changing environment. We might need to find new lending sources than we've used in the past. And here's a list of everybody who's been lending, the amounts they've been lending, the types of properties, where they've been lending. You see property address over here. So just a lot of good information to try and mine opportunities out of. It is going to take some time and it is going to take some research, but I do believe, in fact, I had a meeting with a couple of brokers this morning that have already found a deal off of these notice of trustee sale information. Last is commercial refis, very similar to that commercial loan information, showing who the active lenders are in the market, the types of loans that they're doing and where. So that's our commercial activity report. Like I said, it comes out every Friday. So if you'd like to be added to that distribution list, we'll make sure that we add you on there. The last thing that I wanted to go over that Sean asked me to look at a little bit is as a sample of a title commitment and some tips and tricks on this. This is a deal that Sean actually completed fairly recently. And so is a good example of what a very recent commitment is going to look like. We have this, what we call live look, which is just an interactive way to look at this and access those documents. But you will see that there are hyperlinks into all of the different exceptions and requirements that we list within the title commitment. One of the first things that you always want to look at when you're reviewing a title commitment is to confirm that A, we have the right property address, that we have the right ownership information, that the buyer is listed under that proposed insured. Hold on, I gotta grab my select tool here. Under this proposed insured, right? I'm looking at who the current owner is. Like I mentioned, the property address up top. Some of those are just very basic, but trust me, there's been a couple of situations in the past, and one recently where the client was basically selling properties from one of his entities to another entity. He drafted his own purchase agreement, and he had a portfolio of 6 different properties that he wanted transferred from one LLC to another different LLC. Well, in the purchase contract, which is our instructions, and we're going to go off of that purchase contract, he only listed one of the 6 properties. He didn't look at the title commitment. We closed the transaction, and now we've had to go back and do corrective deeds to capture the other 5 properties that were supposed to be included in that contract and on the commitment. So just some very basic things to look out for and double checking, for your client. We're going to look at legal description. Not every commitment is going to list a parcel number. We don't insure property addresses. We don't insure parcel numbers. We insure legal descriptions. And so to make sure that you're checking this legal description, and one of the best ways to do that is to look at the last deed when the property sold the last time, and making sure that what they bought is what they are selling to you or your client. Like I said, everything is hyperlinked in here to get into these specific documents. And in this case, we are looking at a survey of the property. So every title commitment is broken down into 2 different parts. One is called section schedule, and they're both Schedule B. Schedule B's requirements and Schedule B exceptions. Think of Schedule B requirements as a to-do list to close the property. So what you're going to see are some very generic terms like, pay for state or interest to be insured, pay premium and fees, pay prorated taxes. It's going to list information that we need from the owners and from the buyers as far as authority documents, which happens in residential, but not as much. But we review all of those documents for, in this case, it's, T30 LLC. Well, we need copies of their articles of incorporation and their governing documents so that we are 100% sure on who has authority to sign documents for that corporation. So again, just something to look out for. Most everything on this list is going to be completed by your escrow officer. Sometimes they're going to reach out to you to help obtain some of this information. For example, this authority information from the seller and from the buyer, that is something that you can help us obtain. Sometimes we're going to have to order a payoff. Well, when there's a loan, we're going to have to order a payoff. That's something that the seller and you can help accelerate. These loan payoffs sometimes take 2 weeks to a month, depending on the type of loan it is. And so it's really important to get out in front of these things so that it doesn't delay closing. You'll see an assignment of rents. So different documents that have to do with the commercial financing. we see in this case, we need to record a termination of hazardous substances certificate and indemnity. If you're interested in that, talk to your escrow officer and they'll educate you on what it is. But again, I look at this as a to-do list. And so back when I was a young broker, I would call my escrow officer right after we removed contingencies, right? We all know that those first 15 to usually 30 days on a commercial property are going to be about inspections, both physical inspections, title inspections, termite inspections, all of those things. Once those contingencies are removed, I would call my escrow officer and say, from here, what can I help with, right? What can I help to get this deal across the finish line? And they'd say, pull out your title commitment and, you can help me with items 13 and 14. Go get those authority documents from your seller. And all of this is going to help speed up the process and make sure that we don't, get down to that 11th hour and we're still missing something that's going to hold up the deal.
Yeah, I just did that this morning actually with Stephanie, and I just sent her an email this morning on a closing I have next week and said, hey, what do we need? And she sent me a quick email back and said, I still need these 3 things. And so, I followed up with my client and to do that. One other quick comment, sorry to interrupt, Eric, is on the assignment of rents. That's really, obviously important when you have tenants, in a commercial property, a retail center, or what have you, to get that assignment of rents, because basically you're transferring the leases. Leases are legal documents between the landlord and the tenant. And they usually have assignment clauses, and we can talk more about that next month. But we've got to get that assignment of rent so that the new owner, whether you're representing the buyer or the seller, is the one that is able to collect rent from the tenants.
Right. And on that same note, you'll probably talk about estoppel of certificates as well, right? And getting that documentation to verify the terms of their leases for the buyer's interest.
We actually one of the agents that's on here right now, we just went through this a couple months ago, where we weren't disclosed that there was a lease, and we found out that we had a lease, and so we had to get an estoppel from them, and it was a happy ending. It all worked out and everything.
Good.
So, but we had to work through some stuff.
Again, the old cliche, surprises kill deals, right? All of a sudden, somebody goes, wait, there's a tenant? No, I was going to go in and remodel the whole thing. Now I have to wait for 2 years for somebody's low market rent to burn off. Yeah, lots of different situations like that. So that's part 1 of Schedule B. It's going to be requirements. And again, I look at it as a to-do list. So work with your escrow officer to, help any way you can to get these items in and get these requirements fulfilled so that we can close escrow. The second part of Schedule B is called exceptions. Exceptions, at the very simplest explanation, are known facts that we will not be insuring. And so this is usually where, on a development side of the business, where attorneys are going to get involved and negotiate with the title company on what is going to be covered by their policy and what is not going to be covered by their policy. In an existing, call it an improved property structure, right? Typical building, couple tenants, there's not a whole lot of negotiation to be done. But I would certainly always recommend from a CYA email to your client to have an attorney review this. So there's information on here that's very generic and boilerplate. For example, the fact that in 1891 all mineral rights and water rights were acquired, were gifted, were sold to the United States of America. You're going to see this on almost every single deal that you look at. It's a very generic, very common thing, but anytime those questions come up, That's where I want, you to think of us and being able to advise and give you the right terminology to, walk your client through these things and help them understand. What do we know? We're not going to cover any water rights, claims, or title to water, whether or not disclosed by the public record. Now, one term that you're going to hear from a title insurance standpoint is called an endorsement. An endorsement in generic insurance terms is just buying additional coverage. And there is a list of the most common endorsements. There's a lot of different endorsements that you can buy, that the client can buy to cover additional items on title. One of the things that I would always recommend you recommend to your buyer or your client is I would always default to recommend they get an extended policy of title insurance. The standard policy is going to be purchased by the seller, and it would be the buyer's responsibility to purchase extended coverage. Very simple explanation, and I've got a document that I can share with everyone. Standard title insurance covers everything of record that we can find. Extended policy is going to cover items not of record. So the very rare and random example is your buyer acquires a property. We close escrow. Nothing out of the ordinary shows up on the title commitment, and they get a standard policy of insurance. A couple months later, somebody comes out of the woodwork. We'll say it's the seller's ex-boyfriend. Random, but it's going to happen sometime. And that random ex-boyfriend pulls out what's called a quitclaim deed. And you're going to see this, quitclaim deed reference here. But basically, they pull out a quitclaim deed that says, hey, I own the property. The seller sold me the property via this quitclaim deed that is notarized and dated, but we just never recorded it. Well, under a standard policy of title insurance, that is not going to be covered under their policy. If they had extended, then it most likely is. So again, what's of record and versus what's not of record. That extended policy, we're going to do more due diligence to qualify issuing that extended policy. One of those things is usually a survey, which takes time and costs money. But wouldn't it be better for that buyer to know that the neighbor's fence is in his or her yard or not? Wouldn't it be nice to know that if the person's thinking about adding square footage on, or maybe they're buying a neighboring lot, that there isn't a water retention easement that covers 3/4 of the lot and they can't build on it? There's different items that are going to pop up with that additional inspection that is going to cover your client in the long run. And yes, it's going to cost a few $1,000s more, but for your purposes, I would always recommend that extended, because you never want to get into a situation as a broker, whether it's because of a 1031 exchange or an inspection or extended coverage versus standard coverage, where that client comes back to you and says, Sean, why didn't you tell me? Sean, all of a sudden my neighbor's coming and saying that my fence is on their property and I need to go and spend money to get it moved. Wouldn't it have been nice if I had somebody else pay for that? Or, we talk about it in the 1031 side of things. Send them an email and ask them if they're doing a 1031 exchange and recommend, information, they go talk to their CPA about it. Never want to get down to that closing date and somebody says, oh yeah, I think I'm going to do a 1031 exchange, and it's too late. And all of a sudden now they're paying, their tax bill. And if you don't have some sort of evidence that you recommended something, then they could potentially bring you into that lawsuit. So there's my soapbox on that one. So everything in here, like I said, is known and of record, and we're not insuring it. For example, item 6 here, right? We know that there's an easement, covenant, condition, and restriction set forth in that book 565 of maps, page 47. Now, what is that? We don't know unless we click on it. But I would encourage you to click on all of these things and help with the due diligence for your client. You know, it looks like the same map, and I can zoom out, and I'm not going to bore you with trying to find this easement on this map. But the reality is that, you know, the information's out there. And if you know that your client is going to try and build something, and there's an easement that they have to abide by, you know, that information is material to their acquisition and therefore material to your advising them, you know, through this process. Some of them are going to be very generic, like this item 7, underground power. I don't even really click on this one, right? Is there electricity to the property? Yes or no? You know, you're usually going to see some of these. I don't see a plumbing one, which I'm kind of surprised about. But here's a great example: reciprocal easement and maintenance agreement. Well, who's taking care of what, right? Does my client, are they responsible for taking care of a common area? What portion of that common area? Who's managing that process? Who's billing that process? How are those monies being divided up through that common area to be managed, and you know, and who's covering those costs? Is there going to be an expense reconciliation at the end of the year from a management company on what was spent versus, you know, if there was a shortfall or if there is a credit coming back? All of these items are material to the deal, and I would say, you know, your responsibility to at least have a somewhat of an understanding of what it is, how it affects the property. I can help with those questions and answers when they come around.
Yeah, this is really important. And actually, this is a good example, because what happened here is that the building owners in this complex actually believed that it was an informal association agreement. And that's how it was disclosed to us. And then when we got the title report, we actually saw, hey, there's actually a formal association agreement that was created when they created the property. And so, you know, it's important to click through and look at all those. I mean, we're responsible for doing the due diligence and letting our clients know anything that may affect them. So this is a great example, because this actually was not disclosed to us. It was disclosed that it was informal, and lo and behold, there's actually one recorded.
Yeah, and you know, especially in multi-building parks, we've seen it a lot where the original declaration and CC&Rs do outline an association needing to be formed, and you'll go on the Corporation Commission and we'll search for that Saguaro Ventures or whatever they want to call the association. And yes, it was created, but it's inactive and hasn't, you know, and no documents or annual reports have been recorded for years. Well, somebody's eventually going to have to pay the piper, right? Somebody's eventually going to have to take responsibility for these things. And you certainly don't want it to be a surprise. You know, we're all in the business of getting deals across the finish line. And I try to think that I increase probabilities of deals closing, but I've certainly had a couple of instances in my career where I've killed deals, not intentionally, but because we've uncovered information, you know, for the broker, for the owner, for the potential buyer, that changed their mind on moving forward with the building. One in particular, there was a building, call it a 2-tenant office building, and obviously common area. Well, the common area was one parcel, and each of the tenants were individual condos. And the way that the documentation read is that both tenants were responsible for the common area, and the tenant, the buyer just said, you know what, I don't know that person. I don't know how they're going to keep up with their stuff. What happens if they don't, if their side of the lot, has a bunch of weeds and, graffiti and things that they're not taking care of, and I don't have any sort of authority to go and fix those things. Some of those unknowns need to be addressed before you can move forward confidently. What else do we have on this? Surveys. Yep, there's that survey, anything that's disclosed in that. And so, yeah, it's just good to understand what is and is not going to be included in that title insurance. And I'm very happy to get on the phone with anybody and talk through these things. My escrow teams are as well. And if we need to take it higher, then I've got a direct line into our chief title officer, regional title officer, as well as our regional underwriting team. And we can go and present a case and work through these things. But those are the main parts. Everything else in the policy we call a policy jacket. I can't say that I've read it all, so I don't necessarily need to encourage all of you to understand it. But these Schedule A of the property and ownership information, and then Schedule B, Part 1 requirements, Part 2 exceptions, you have to look at on every deal, and really understanding and advising your clients. Anything else you want to add on that one, Sean?
No, that was outstanding. So the only thing I would say, with the survey is, I usually recommend to my clients that they get a survey, at least in writing. A lot of them do decline, but I just want to make sure that I recommend it. And if you're spending a couple $1 million on a property, spending a couple $1,000 to give you that peace of mind on the survey is in my mind, at least, is money well spent. So that's one thing. And then if you do have a situation like Eric just went over with the where we discovered something in the preliminary title report that your client needs to be aware of, like this set of association rules. I download that from the hyperlink to my computer separately, and then make sure I send that in writing in an email to my client, highlighting that they need to review this, and look, there's these association things that we didn't know about, and also let the listing broker know as well, so that they're this did come up in here. So
yeah,
just to make sure that you have a paper trail.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say, for those of you who are doing some leasing as well as sales, please feel free to reach out to me to get a copy of the declaration and the CC&Rs for different properties that you're looking at from a tenant representation standpoint. Yes, all of those CC&Rs and declarations can be found on the recorder's website, but they take time, and I can find them very quickly. And then we can, get our eyes on them and help answer questions about specifically use restrictions, within a shopping center, or maybe you've got a client that wants to build an out parcel pad for a retail property, understanding that it can't be a Mexican restaurant, or it can't be a burger joint or something like that because of use restrictions within the shopping center. All of those are good pieces of obviously great pieces of information to have. And even though we're not going to be handling an escrow in that situation, we're here for the long run, and we know it'll eventually come around. And so please don't hesitate to reach out and get this information from us. The last thing, I did find that extended, standard versus extended flyer, and I'll provide this to Sean as well. Again, the biggest thing is what's of record versus what's not of record. Anything that's not of record, your client is potentially exposed if they don't have extended coverage, including that survey. So
Great.
We went over a lot of information here. I will be sending everything as a follow-up. Please review it. One of the things that I've been very lucky in my career is that I've always kind of been in win-win situations where, me helping leads to everybody being more successful. It sounds very sales pitchy, but my value increases the more you use us. The more information you ask from us, the more you engage to get problems solved and work through these kind of title situations. The better you're going to be for your clients. And like I said, we both get paid on the same day. So everything I can do to help you, find and win more business is good for all of us.
Yeah, and we switched over using Chicago Title and Eric and Stephanie about a year ago, I think, a little over a year ago, and we've been very, very happy. They've done an outstanding job. So Stephanie is super responsive and negotiating this, and it can be tricky with commercial deals. We had a different title company a few years ago, and we had lots of problems. So we're real happy. So with Chicago, and I appreciate Eric, you coming to time, spending your time and going over this today. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, all right. Good. Anything else, Eric?
We do residential also, and if anybody is in the residential world and wants to meet with one of our residential sales reps to learn about the different tools and resources we have on the residential side, please let me know. I admit that I started in commercial 2 weeks out of college and don't really know my way around the residential world, so I'm not as much value there. But if you are interested, we've got great teams and a lot of great resources to, again, help you find and win more business.
Thank you so much. This
All right.
presentation was very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Great. Well, I'll put all this information into an email to Sean. He can send it around, and then, like I said, please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you ever have a need for any of this.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You
Thanks, guys.
also.